next 10 years, and it needs an honest conversation with the citizens of Europe that is currently absent.
With Unilever's 57% of its sales in emerging markets, I also asked Paul how the slowdown that we've seen in key markets like China and Brazil have affected him. And although they've had an increase, a 10.3% increase in sales in those areas, he did concede that those markets are really quite difficult still.
It's a consistent theme that's coming through on earnings season now. BASF warned today as well it had slower growth in Asia since the fourth quarter of 2011. This slowdown that's playing through, how concerning do you think it is for corporate profits?
I think there is, last year most of the profit were driven by emerging market. This year is the opposite. If we look at the results of Unilever in Brazil, in Turkey, in Indonesia, there is pressure. There's pressure in terms of pricing and there's pressure in terms of volume. So it's not yet dragging down the company, but you can't expect the same level of growth as you could a few years ago.
From a macro perspective too, don't you? The UK market is one that's been told to go and chase growth in Asia, go and make those deals with the Chinese, and it's doing that now, yet China's pressing on the brakes. Isn't this going to, I guess, trim some of the growth we might have expected here in the UK?
Well, I think perhaps prospects for UK consumers are improving. We could see a bit of a further recovery in consumer spending. In fact, hopefully inflation will ease quite quickly in the second half of this year, supporting an increase in real earnings. So I think it'd be wrong for companies to fully rule out increases in sales in the domestic market here in the UK.
I think though we do have a lot of PLC companies that have emerging markets earnings, and we've been relying on those. If you look at Unilever, Europe and America slowed down 1.3%, so it's relying more and more on that emerging market growth. And if that comes down, and it's not just Unilever, look, they have Marmite and tea and hair products and almost everything we have in our household, but a lot of UK PLC is going to be affected by this slowdown.
The reality is, though, you have to keep on getting that organic growth, don't you, in China? You need to keep growing the business there, and if competition starts to come into the fore from the domestic players, that's when you've got strife for these companies.
And you have to have a good set of product. If you analyze the result of Unilever, home care product are up double digit, and food is up only 1%. So the product offering, market by market, have to be really.
Yeah, I think it's interesting actually. I was asking about the food products area, and things like spreads, which are hugely important. Obviously, they don't sell in emerging markets that much. They sell, your floor in Europe and in States, and when you don't have that emerging market growth, you have problems. But whereas products like Tresemme hair care, where they've launched in Brazil, have really done well and helped the company grow. Also, the sunshine.
This is about Brazilian hair, but
sunshine and ice cream. That's also a key mix for Unilever.
Of course it is. To a more serious point, though, reputation seems to be really important. You've been talking about Glaxo all week. We just had this flash that we've been showing that the Chinese Commerce Ministry is saying the Glaxo investigation won't affect China, FDI. But reputation is something that the Western companies really rely on in the likes of China. And if you start to destroy that, doesn't that just remove the edge that Western companies have and the profitability?
Historically, Unilever always had a strong history of corporate responsibility. So I'm not too sure what could be the impact if there will be a negative impact in developing economy or in China. In terms of corporate responsibility, I think one of the risks is probably in Europe. The food labeling, for example, in UK, the government tried to introduce, the traffic light system, and a lot of companies like Nestle approved this labeling. Few companies did not approve. It was Coca-Cola and Unilever, and I think it's a bit at odds with usually the high level of corporate responsibility.
I think you're right. In the multinationals, risk has become increasingly important for all multinationals, and that reputational risk and supply chain risk is a big part of the focus going forward.
Guys, we're going to wrap this up. Samuel Tomb, UK economist at Capital Economics, thank you for joining us on the GDP numbers today, and also Helia, we'll see you a bit later in the show. Well, elsewhere, South Korea's economy grew